I don't know. I don't want to check my speaker. Hi, Andre.
Hey there, Laura.
You can hear me?
Yes, I can.
Perfect, because I'm getting a message that says my speaker's not working, but it's like, why not?
Oh, not me.
Okay, it's working.
All right.
How are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you. I'm juggling meetings here, and I'm like, gee, I'm as busy as ever, so I'm fine, thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm juggling work. Hang on one second as well, first of all, hang on a second as I pause the recording. This is a public meeting. We are recording it. And I'm going to share the screen with the agenda as soon as I can. And we're always apologizing because we always think we have everything set up, and it's not always, however, easy to find what we need to like agendas to share. Oh, there it is. And okay, so calling the meeting to order. Hello, welcome. My name is Laura Myers. I am the co-chair of UNNC's Planning and Zoning Committee. John Arnold is the other co-chair. I don't.
Hello. Hey, everybody. No, I'm here. Hey, everybody. I'm John Arnold. I'm a at-large member of the UNNC and live in Jefferson Park.
Thank you. And so a little introduction about our process, and then we'll do an approval of the agenda. So United Neighborhoods Neighborhood Council, when we established our system of committees years ago, we decided that we would only appoint the chair and if there is one, a co-chair, and that otherwise at our committees, any member of any stakeholder, anybody who's participating in the meeting for the purpose of who is a committee member, everyone's a committee member on the night or time of the meeting. That means you can speak like everybody else, meaning wait to be called on, but speak, make a motion, vote. Our motions at this committee and other committees are basically recommendations to the board. The board is an elected body. So at the governing board meetings, obviously only the governing board members make motions and votes. So that being said, I've got the agenda up on the share screen. I hope you can see it. When I'm doing this, I can't see anything else. I don't know how you're reacting or not, but we have basically 3 key items on this agenda. We're going to probably take this in a different order. Item number 3, monitoring conditions on development projects, specifically tree planting and maintenance. Item number 4 is a proposal to co-name a segment of Crenshaw Boulevard to commemorate Malcolm X. And item number 5 is a discussion and maybe an action, I don't know, about several new initiatives to preserve the city's RSO, rent stabilized housing units. And then we have our normal public comments and also follow up to previous cases. It's been requested that we flip the order and do the proposal to co-name a segment of Crenshaw Boulevard to commemorate Malcolm X as the first item after public comments. If that is the pleasure of the committee, then I would need a motion to approve the agenda as amended rather than just
I move to approve the agenda as amended, moving item number 4 to item number 3.
Okay.
I second that.
Thank you. So this one's informal. I can't see anybody's hands while I'm sharing the screen, so I'm going to take the agenda off the screen and just looking for essentially ayes or nays. So you can either say aye or raise your hand. And if you're new to Zoom, I can tell you how to raise your hand. So which would be, if you're looking at your computer screen, all the black, if you go down with your cursor to the word participants, click on that, and it will bring up the people who are in this meeting, but also at the bottom of that column, so you see everybody's names, but you will also see the ability to raise your hand. So you can do it like that or just say aye. So all in favor, either raise your hands or say aye.
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 Okay. Any opposition to the approval of the agenda as amended? Was that a nay? Did I hear a nay? I did not. Okay. Okay. So we've amended this agenda. The next item is public comment, and that would be anybody who wants to make a public comment on anything not on this agenda. So if anybody wants to bring up a land use topic, or I guess anything else that is not on this agenda. Okay, so I have you Sun, but I don't think that's your full name. But go ahead, unmute yourself.
Hello, my name is Soleil.
Soleil.
Last name is No, so it's just my initials. But yes, hello. My name is Dr. Soleil No. I am a resident of the most western part of Western Heights, in the council, and basically I'm just having all types of issues with regards to how things are going as far as our HPOZ overlay and just my neighbors and what's going on with them. I'm in a mad campaign to how to get our bump stop back at Arlington, and in a way how I could get preferential parking on 20th Street, as well as some of the trash and other things that are happening in the neighborhood. So now I've gone rogue, and I basically go out and I pick up trash.
Okay. So we're not allowed to really respond during public comment. I think if it wasn't you, somebody else had also mentioned the one sort of orphan block in Western Heights that didn't have preferential parking, and that request has moved that on to the council office. It may not have been you who brought it to our attention previously.
No, I've just been stewing in my juices, just getting mad for the last 11 months. But basically, it's just I'm at the point of shaking my fist, get off my lawn type of situation. But it's just pretty much dealing with just people who are just taking advantage. Every landlord right now is wants full market rent, and for that full market rent, I feel that I should be able to walk outside of my my flat and not have dog excrement all over the place, as well as glass from accidents and just other things that's going on. So like I said, I've gone rogue, and I went to Lowe's, and I just basically I'm cleaning the street myself. I would prefer not to do that, but it's just gotten to a point where the services that we are getting, they were pretty paltry before the pandemic, and now it's just a free-for-all. So I spend most of Thursdays and Wednesdays just calling traffic enforcement, because I have neighbors that they do very manipulative things with the parking spaces, and it's just gotten so cagey. At this bump stock on Arlington, it's just like people use that regularly to dump trash, and I'm like, well, you're not doing that on 21st Street. Why are you doing it on 20th Street?
Right.
And
So
it's just
Right.
So
So
that's
can
my
I have your email address. Would it be okay if I email you when this meeting is over?
yes.
And I'll give you some people to speak to. Okay?
Thank you. That was my public comment.
Thank you. Does anybody else have a public comment? Okay, well, moving then to the item. Moving to item number 4, which is now item number 3, a proposal to co-name a segment of Crenshaw Boulevard to commemorate Malcolm X. And I actually ended up writing a fairly long agenda item. Andre, I know you're presenting. Did you see the agenda?
I did see the agenda and I saw what you wrote, and that was a good synopsis of what we'd like to discuss. So
And do you
yes.
need me to bring that back up or to share any of the documents?
Yes. Could you bring that up? Let's see. The document would be the map, I suppose.
Sure, I got it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And it's a 5-mile corridor. And of that 5-mile corridor, the 5-mile corridor is from the freeway to the north to 79th Street, the boundary of Inglewood to the south. Of that length, just 1 mile of it, approximately 1 mile from the freeway to Coliseum, is within United Neighbors area. And that's just half the street to the east, of course, because the western side is West Adams.
Right,
So there we are. That's the general map there. You can see.
right. So it'd be essentially our area would end around the big thick purple line.
Yeah, that's Obama Boulevard.
Right.
Before we
and
begin,
go
are we
to
officially?
Exposition Place and almost to Obama, maybe including the north side. It's always been unclear to me because the neighborhood
Sure.
was called Exposition Place Neighborhood Association.
Right. Laura, before, I don't know if are we officially beginning our presentation at this
Sure.
moment?
We are.
Okay, well, I'd like to, you and I, of course, have known each other for years, but for those who don't know me, I'm Andre Msonga Mbele Andre Parvenu, and I'm a former city planner with the city of Los Angeles for 15 years. And I worked in the Census Bureau as a partnership specialist in your area included, and other areas during the census. And I'm also your current California State Redistricting Commissioner, and I'm a former resident of Crenshaw Manor. Presently, I'm a community advocate that works with various neighborhood councils along the Crenshaw corridor. I'm simply presenting an overview of the proposal. As I mentioned quickly earlier, the corridor extends from the freeway 5 miles to Inglewood's border. And what we're asking for, and we want to be specific about this, we're asking to co-name. We're not asking any postal changes or anything else in terms of addresses, official addresses, but a symbolic co-naming of the corridor. And we have the support of the neighborhood councils to the south. That includes the West Area Neighborhood Council. We have a very nice letter of support from them. We have a letter of support from Park Mesa Heights to the south. That's a 2.5 mile stretch of the corridor. And West Adams, we'll be presenting at West Adams what we've presented to them before, and it looks like favorable. There'll be an unanimous approval from them. So it's looking good in terms of the neighborhood council support. We're just waiting on you guys. And I've contacted all of the major entities along the corridor from the freeway all the way to Inglewood, all the major anchors and the stores, the churches, for example, we spoke with West Angeles. We have their buy-in. They don't object, even though we haven't heard directly from Bishop Blake yet, but he'll probably put something in writing for us. And all the other big players along the corridor, ADAP, for example, and Smart and Final, and all the other big box entities there within your boundaries, your jurisdictional area. So Ideally, we could have this completed by May the 19th, but we don't know. But the sooner we move forward with this, the better. And I'm not the actual advocate. I'm not the actual spearhead or leader of this effort. We have online with me one of the two facilitators and leaders and community advocates for this effort. One is Tori Brandon Reese, who's not with us this afternoon to present. And we have his colleague and co-advocate, Mr. Shaka Satori. So Shaka, can you please continue? And after Shaka makes his presentation, we're open for any questions that you all may have.
Okay.
And thank you for your time.
So Shaka, you can unmute yourself. There you go. And again, just
I
tell me
have.
if I need to share the letter or anything else.
Okay, you can put the letter up if you like,
could.
just so people can see it and read it.
Sure.
I
And
I
I'm
just want to
putting the
thank
one
every,
that's on the letterhead, right? Not the one labeled petition. I have two different things from you guys. I'll put up the one and you'll tell me if it's the right one. I'm looking for it. Is that the one you want?
yeah, whichever is fine. As long, if it's something that Andre sent to you, then it more than expresses
Okay.
what we're trying to accomplish. So I first, I just want to thank you guys for allowing us to present to you. This is you guys are very important to what we're doing. And we want to make sure that we do our due diligence in making sure that we touch all the bases and make sure that everybody that is affected by this has an opportunity to be a part of this and is on board with this. This is a long-standing effort that we have revitalized based on political climate, based on the things that we're facing as a community in terms of gentrification and all sorts of things. It's important that for you to understand that all we're doing here in essence is just honoring the globally iconic human rights hero that Malcolm X was, by adding his name to the already globally iconic Crenshaw Boulevard, and to do that in such a way that enhances both names and causes no adverse conditions when it comes to the existing businesses, when it comes to literature, letterhead, postal delivery, and that kind of thing. We want to make sure that we honor, appreciate, and welcome everything that Crenshaw Boulevard already stands for. And we see the vision and potential, and we want to make sure that we just add some cultural significance to what's already being put in place when it comes to what is now Crenshaw Boulevard. And just to reemphasize what Brother Andre said, we're not trying to change Crenshaw Boulevard. We want to enhance it. We want to add the name Malcolm X and all the cultural significance that name brings. So we don't want to take anything away. We just want to add to it and build on it. And with that, with what you wrote, expressed greatly, what our position. And so I don't want to waste the time on talking as much as we would like to, Andre and I both, answer any questions that you guys may have, any reservations or anything like that. We appreciate that we have so far gotten unanimous support, but we want to make sure that we afford you guys the opportunity to ask any questions so that we can continue in that vein. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Ms. Myers.
Okay, thank you. Has everyone had a chance to read the letter? Meaning,
Yes.
meaning it's hard for me to
Yes.
share and have the screen shared. So as soon as
Yes, I read it.
anybody else need any more time reading this, or can I take it down?
Will the link be available for download?
Yes, this is up in our agenda packet that was on your agenda. There's the link to a Google Drive. So,
Alright.
so what we have in the Google, well, there's a lot of stuff in the Google Drive because we have 3 items tonight. But this letter and the map that you saw and another letter that's labeled petition, but it looks more like a letter. And the 4th thing is maybe not appropriate because I didn't know which one would be correct, but I downloaded a little biography from Wesleyan University of Malcolm X, a little biography. It may not have been the perfect little biography, but it was the one, sorry, the one I scrambled
Okay.
for at the last minute. I didn't want to use Wikipedia because God knows. So, so I'm going to stop the share so I can see the hand. So I see John is now with us. So I like to always start with my co-chair to see what he would like to say, if anything.
Thanks. I have a few, just kind of, I like the whole list of names. I think that's it's a really great movement to change. I saw the list of Harriet Tubman and W.B. Du Bois. What's the vision on changing other streets' names and which streets, and why Crenshaw now, Malcolm X now? And I'm just wondering must be a pecking order or something, or what's most important. And I think those are the only questions I have.
Okay. To answer your question, as far as the vision in terms of the future, in terms of adding different names, we have not created a list. What we'd like to ultimately do is have representation from all of the city councils involved so that we can make those determinations together as a group, and so that you guys can also be a part of that. And it's not just us doing it ourselves and then presenting it to you, as much as us as a community coming together and making those decisions.
Yeah.
When it comes to Malcolm and why now and why Crenshaw, one is Malcolm's significance. Malcolm is arguably one of the 3 most significant figures in our community, along with Martin Luther King and Marcus Garvey. Why Crenshaw? Well, one of the main reasons is because, like I said, the significance of Crenshaw and the significance of Malcolm. Number 2 is it intersects with Martin Luther King Jr. in the heart of the community.
Yeah.
And just as those of us who've done our studies understand that during Martin's time and during Malcolm's time, they were actually in ideology working towards each other. They were coming together. And so we are symbolically doing what they were doing in life. And we think that is very important. It also is important in the sense that starting at the 10, which is Rosa Parks Freeway, and coming down, it connects Rosa Parks with Martin Luther King, with Nipsey Hussle Square, Leimert Park, and so it's significant in that way in terms of connecting certain other heroes, Obama, so in all that those other heroes represent, it makes the connection with all of them. So we think it's significant in that way.
As far as my opinion goes, I think it's a great idea to make permanent in the face of change this part of the diversity of Los Angeles. And I'm imagining, what does East LA do with its heritage to change the street names? What does Koreatown do I'm thinking about all these areas of Los Angeles where most of the streets were named after either the developer, the developer's children, what was marketable. I think about the streets in Leimert Park, Olmsted, Cherrywood, they've been around for a while, but they don't mean anything. And so I'm wondering, so it makes me think, why not name the streets, take it out of the developer from 1906's hands and make it into something that's meaningful to the community, for this community and for any community. And I think and across the diversity of Los Angeles, if it happened more often, think about how rich it would make the city's grid in the street, and also make everyone aware of where they are and where they're coming into or leaving or wherever, whatever they're doing. So I think it's a really I think it's a great idea, and I certainly I like all the other names on the list as well. So that'd be my opinion. So I think I'll leave it at that and let other people talk.
And-
Mr.
and
Arnold, you're
Okay,
very
I'm gonna-
appreciated.
Okay,
And
Thanks.
can I just say
Thank you.
something
I just
quickly?
want to
Go
add
ahead.
this.
okay, I have
No,
some
no.
hands raised and everybody's talking over each other.
Oh,
So
sorry.
Andre, then
Go ahead,
Shaka,
Shaka.
then I'll go to
go
him.
ahead, Shaka. Go ahead.
Okay,
Shaka.
I just want to say it's very significant what you just said. Everything you said was right on point. But one of the things you said, you mentioned Koreatown and that kind of thing, and that brings to mind that, you know, when you cross that 10, you go into Koreatown, you know where you are, and that's a beautiful thing. The way that they have the advantage of language, where you can see the language. They have the advantage of architecture. And there's just things that you see when you go in there that, like you said, add to the richness of all of Los Angeles. And so we do want to do something similar to that. And one of our most potent ways of doing that is the street signs, you know, and that type of thing, and do murals and this type of thing. So we really appreciate what you said, because you get it. It's right on point. I just wanted to follow through on that, and Brother Andre or whoever else
Yeah.
can go.
Yeah,
Thank you,
Andre, were you
Shaka.
gonna say something?
Yeah, in response to John, I can really appreciate your perspective on that. And I just want you all to know, the entire committee to know that we aren't a street name changing group of people, that we aren't a specific entity that's going around changing names, and that we're specific to this Malcolm X Boulevard effort. And that's it for us. Whatever other people do is what they do. You know, we understand that LA is a huge cacophony of different communities, and as you so rightly said, John, you know, it's like a salad bowl, you know, with different kinds of entities to make a different flavor. But we're a single purpose entity right here. This is what we're interested in, and what we're interested in coincides with whatever you all have planned in terms of street enhancements. I was one of the architects for the Crenshaw Streetscape Plan, which you'll be discussing a bit later. And I understand about your name placemaking efforts with the entryway there coming off the freeway, identifying your neighborhood, and other enhancements throughout your community. This does not by any way, you know, affect any ongoing name change efforts that may occur. We're just a single effort outfit, and we just wanted to be very clear about that. That in terms of your local neighborhood politics, we have no desire whatsoever to be influential on any other name changing or name adding efforts. So we're a single purpose outfit. So that's it. So that's my addition to it.
Right, and I do see we have some hands, but just to comment myself on some of this, the effort we were making, Andre, if you recall, back in the day, was to have a gateway that actually at the 10 freeway off ramp, essentially, where people are heading
Right.
south on Crenshaw, to name all of the neighborhoods they would be driving through until they hit Inglewood. You know, so it's going to be like one of those, I don't know, multiple names on some sort of
Right.
gate tree thing that has never been designed. And I actually see in the final streetscape plan, the only reference to it is that if there was to be placemaking of any sort, then there is to be a committee that consists of at least one member of every neighborhood council. I mean, there's a page about all of that. So I don't know how this intersects that, because, you know, because this isn't, it is placemaking or gateway, but it isn't. So anyway, there's that. The other thing is, I don't know that it has to be street names, but I'm very quickly, there's a bunch of names of African-American heroes that we don't honor. And this is in so not a correct order, but William Bratton, who is a civil rights attorney, William Grant Still, first African-American composer. These are all people who lived in our community. Eric Dolphy, perhaps the most important jazz saxophonist ever. Hugh Macbeth, civil rights attorney, human rights advocate, and champion in his lifetime of the incarcerated Japanese Americans during World War II. Architect Paul Williams. Louise Beavers, who's not just an actress, but was, again, a civil rights advocate. Norman Houston, one of the founders of Golden State Mutual, lived in this community. John Somerville, which is the Dunbar Hotel, but he lived eventually in this community. Nellie Lutcher, a very important figure in the music world. These are the African Americans. This is a community that was not and is not 100% African American. So the idea of placemaking is really important, and it'd be good for us to understand after we call on people how we can integrate a big project. Is there money even for the small project? You know, in other words, the street signs for the co-naming, but how do we make sure that if we do this, it doesn't eliminate the ability to do the more of the names all over the place? Because I don't think these are people whose names necessarily need to rename streets. Okay, I'm talking too long. But again, we had a Japanese history, we have a Jewish history, we have an Armenian history. This is in this community. And so, you know, I think we need to be cognizant that it's kind of really, what did you call it, John? It's a salad. It's not a soup. We're not blending together. Oh, you're mute.
Yeah, that was Andre who called it the salad.
Well, it's a salad, but it is. It's a salad. It's not a melting pot. It's all the pieces. Anyway, so we've got Soleil, Mitzi, and Mika.
That's the beauty of having squares and intersections with the corners, because for more localized significance, that option does exist.
Right. Okay. So oh, your hand went down. Okay. Soleil, you don't have your hand up? Guess not. Now you do. So
I just took it down because you ignored it to me, so I didn't know if you were ready for me to.
Yeah, I'm taking hands now. So I called you first, then Mitzi, March Mogul, then Mika. Hi, Mika. How are you? Mika Matsui. So you can start.
Well, basically, it's just so beautiful that and so really timely that something like this would be proposed, and because it's not necessarily a change as far as, you know, street address that people would have to undergo much changes as far as like letterhead and those things. The only thing I could foresee as far as, say, a negative would be, you know, a lot of people get very upset in regards to when change is proposed in any possible plausible way. But the community is so rich. It's a smorgasbord. It's gumbo. It's a lot. It's all those different things. There's a synagogue that's now a church on Jefferson near Arlington, and you could see the actual architecture in the in our community. And just in thinking forward as far as like our pandemic recovery, one thing that hopefully developers and people like that will think about is that we don't want to destroy what makes Los Angeles Los Angeles. When we get back to whatever we're going to get back to, when it all opens up, we want to make sure that we keep this LA. You know, say like if I can go to Koreatown and know that it's Koreatown, that's great. But I don't necessarily want I don't want where I'm at, Western Heights, to look like K-Town. Just because over here it's more of a different architectural mix-up. So each neighborhood being able to keep its distinct flavor, being it inclusive and welcoming to other people that come into the community, and making it actually more diverse, more inclusive, in a cohesion, not just like, okay, I'm going to arbitrarily, name this neighborhood whatever I want to name it because of some arbitrary connection, but actually having ethnographic opinions on what's being named. And that's a beautiful thing that you guys did, come forth and ask about it instead of it just being done. Because within the chrono system, much of Malcolm X is his daughter had spoken up maybe about 2 years ago that he's actively being erased from the Afrosphere in the conversation in regards to that. So him being picked up as well as other people, even if it's just say having a square or a circle or a plaza or a vista named after them, that really shows inclusion, and that's kind of overdue at this point. I could only push back, I would think, is like people who would not be receptive to it. But if knowing our history of the community that we're speaking of, Leimert Park had racial covenants. So it's kind of, isn't it more than past time to be able to update how we're thinking about that, how we're using our land, how things are more equitable. Love Crenshaw to death, but he was a developer that chopped this up and started this to begin with. We have to think about those things. They do matter. And going forward, as far as making this a place where people want to come, because a lot of my pre-pandemic income was based on people coming from other places. And being from another place myself, the first thing I'm thinking about, I want to come here because this is Los Angeles, and everybody from Los Angeles is usually from someplace else, and they all kind of cohedes together. So I don't want to change that vibe. And being the type of person that worked in those industries, right now it's gone. And we don't know how to really adapt because a lot of the flavor of Los Angeles is just, it's gone. So we want to always, as going forward, we want to make sure we keep our money right. And if we have like a bunch of box stores or things that just aren't the real genuine inhabitants that are indigenous, transplanted or whatnot of Los Angeles, that could mean like, well, what's the point of coming here if there's a Starbucks everywhere? We want to make sure that we don't kill the goose that laid the golden egg. And I think this would go a long way towards making sure that doesn't happen. Kudos.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mitzi, and I know I just let myself speak too long and our first speaker speak too long, but go ahead and speak too long and then we'll try and get this under control.
Well, I'll try to be concise and not redundant. I expect that my position will not be popular because I am opposed to this proposal, and I'll explain why. First, just a little bit of recent history. There was a proposal some years ago in City Council to rename a portion of Crenshaw, and I happened to have been in council chambers when that came up, and it was soundly and roundly defeated. There were almost no people in that chamber speaking for it, and that included quite a few well-known local African-American leaders, and it's not for me to name names, but I know who was there, and also included were, a lot of small business people, and they were very, very much opposed to it. So this is something that has been proposed before, albeit not with the name Malcolm X, and it was not popular. That being said, I know that when it comes to popularity contests, these things change. So that being said, what I am most opposed to is the name Malcolm X. This was a man who was a racist and an anti-Semite. I know that he is a hero in the Black community, although for the life of me, I cannot understand why, when there are so many other people of high achievement who, against all the odds, against everything that was against them, socially, politically, etc., managed to be people of major achievement. I'll start with Paul Williams because he lived near here. He lived in the community, albeit north of the freeway, which seems to be your dividing line. How about Paul Robeson? There was a man who took it on the chin. What an elegant, talented, charming man. And he's been all but completely forgotten and dismissed. Parenthetically, Malcolm X has not been forgotten. There are, across this country, there are many, many streets and squares and so on, and schools, by the way, that have been renamed in his honor. But why are we all talking about men? Now, Laura mentioned a few women. I'll give you a few more. How about Misty Copeland? How about Sarah Redmond? I wonder how many of you will know who any of these people are. How about Marian Anderson? How about Charlotte Ray? How about Kizzmekia Corbett? How about Augusta Savage? How about Madam C.J. Walker? You want somebody more recent? How about Dorothy Height? I could go on and on. You don't have to go as far back as Harriet Tubman and W.E.B. Du Bois. But it's always men. And they were not the only ones. You know the old saying, behind every great man is an even greater woman. Well, the women that I just named didn't need a man in front of or behind them. These were all women of achievement who made a mark on society across this nation, and their names should be taught in school. And I object to John's comment that the names have been around, but they don't mean anything. Well, they should mean something, and so should all the names that I just mentioned. All of those people were and remain important. The fact that so many people don't know who they are is the fault of mainly a lousy school system, which has failed all of our children, Black and white and brown. So I have no respect for Malcolm X. I'm sorry. I'm sure that I'm offending people now, but this was a man who spent 10 years in prison for larceny, breaking and entering. That's what he was locked up for, not for being an activist and making a statement on behalf of his people. Oh, no, no. And he probably was assassinated by his own people from his own group who didn't like him. No, this was a man who stood on the backs of his own people. He was a racist and he was an anti-Semite. You want an intersection between Rosa Parks and Dr. King? How about the late John Lewis? There was a man who stood tall. He's a man of achievement. He represents the Black community in a way that Malcolm X couldn't dream of doing. Oh, no.
Okay.
I understand the desire and the support to name squares or streets or whatever to honor other people and other ethnicities and other contributions and so on. That's fine. But you picked the wrong person to start with. That's my comment.
Okay, thank you, Mitzi. Mika,
Yes, thank you. My understanding is this is from the 10 freeway to MLK. And one thing is, as Laura mentioned, this used to be a Japanese community as well in the history. And she also mentioned the Jewish history. And I wanted to ask you, did you know that Starbucks on Crenshaw Coliseum, in Crenshaw Square, where west at the church is right now, where Burger King is on Crenshaw, and Adams, where the Latino church is on Adams and Crenshaw. This has all been once this whole, and Jefferson down going east to near Western has been a Japanese street. And it is great that, you know, we have Martin Luther King Boulevard, and then now we have Obama. But whatever decision is made, because as Mitzi has said, even though there are a lot of opposers, and I'm not opposing or anything, but with all the developments going on and what you all are trying to do, it seems like the history is being erased and only certain history will remain. But the reason why we have an Expo line and we're going to have this LAX line is because it's LA. It should be diverse. We shouldn't be segregated. We should honor and welcome everybody. And if anything, instead of having Malcolm X, I've heard about him. I've learned about, I've been educated about him in school. But as Laura had mentioned, there are people who lived in the community that were great people. And I think, if anything, that is the history of Crenshaw between the 10 freeway and MLK, or a little past, toward in that area. So incorporating that might be more welcoming to anybody than just boom, okay, we have all these people, but didn't live in the Crenshaw area or UNNC area or West Adams area. And there was a mention by John about Koreatown, and there's one Japanese town, but those are just, and right now here in this community where I live, it's just people are there and they're together in their same group, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they had built the history there. It's when things were tough. My parents came here when actually my dad, in the 60s, he had seen the segregation, and he is yellow. And I understand all of that. Japanese people went through a lot too, not my parents, luckily, but, and just to understand the history. And now we're trying to be together, yet you're still kind of divided. And Koreatown is nice in the K-Town area, but again, it's because everybody is there and they made a town. J-Town is there because it's a town, but there's history within our streets that are great. So honoring people like that, whether it's African-American or those that had laid the roads for us, might be a little better. And we already have MLK, and now we just recently got Obama, and we have the Rosa Parks. And I think that itself, and having the Sentinel there, is a great landmark and statement itself, instead of changing it all into one thing, I guess. I don't know. Hopefully you understand, all of you.
yeah, so
If I could
second,
address-
I want to say one thing and then I'll turn it to you. So Mika, thank you. And I would say your parents are, or at least your mom is part of our history, because as I know, she was a longtime employee of my sadly beloved and gone Bungo Japanese restaurant. So so your family was involved in the Japanese history here. I know that. And the Bank of Tokyo building, for those who don't know, is the Union Bank, but the old building is Bank of Tokyo, and it was on the corner of Bronson and Jefferson, but at the Crenshaw and Jefferson shopping center now. And it was designed by Tosh Terasawa, an architect who grew up in Boyle Heights, was, you know, with his family relocated during World War II, and then came back and lived here and went to USC and then designed that beautiful mid-century modern building. So Shaka, I know you wanted to respond.
Yes, thank you. Let me first, I'll address the last one, Ms. Matsui. Thank you for your comments and concerns. I appreciate it. I respect them greatly. I want to say a couple of things. One is that our advocacy for Malcolm X does not mean that we're adverse to any of, number one, the local heroes, other local Black heroes that you guys have spoke of. And number two, we welcome an invitation to be a part of anything that honors the Japanese heritage of the area as well. We're not saying one over the other either. We think that it's important that the Japanese heritage is represented as well. And we look to assist you guys in any efforts that you make in towards that. As pertains to Ms. Mogul's comments, I understand and appreciate your concerns as well. I think if you objectively research, take another look at Malcolm X and his history and that kind of thing, you'll see the distinction between, number one, when Malcolm's words were the words of Elijah Muhammad and the sentiments of Elijah Muhammad, as opposed to his own. He tried to make that clear. And so we need to make that distinction when we review his history and history itself. Second, Malcolm is a global figure. He's not just a figure and hero as far as one community or even one nation. Malcolm is revered all over the world, and for the reason of his courage and speaking truth to power. And in hindsight, especially, we know based on the efforts made by the government and media and that type of thing to paint him in a certain way, to not to look at his humanitarianism objectively. We understand that at this time, because we know that a lot of the documents and everything pertaining to that have been let out for all to see. When it comes to Malcolm in his past, as far as the fact that he went to prison for being a bad guy, he was a horrible guy. When Malcolm was bad, he was very bad. We acknowledge that, but we also appreciate his redemption. We appreciate that once he became the Malcolm X that we love, and not the Malcolm Red Little that we also despise, and that Malcolm learned to despise himself. He did not like that in himself or those types of characteristics in anyone once he became Malcolm X. So he would agree with you that Malcolm does not deserve any acknowledgement, any honoring or anything else, and he wouldn't honor that person himself. So that's not who we're honoring. We're honoring the person that he evolved to become. We're honoring the strength and courage that he represents.
Okay, I'm beginning to see a bunch of hands go up for responses. John, I need to ask you if you're still here. Are you still here?
I'm here.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you. How, since we're
it's a great conversation.
No, it's a great conversation. We're 1 hour into a 2-hour meeting with 2 other agenda items. So how much longer do you think we should be discussing?
So what is our ultimate goal to make a recommendation to the governing board?
Yeah, they need something to go to the governing board.
So
and Andre, hang on one sec. Andre, is it correct? You need this by when? You need to final by May, So we should take this to governing board in March, or are we able?
That is correct. March would be fine, yes. And what we're requesting is simple, a letter of support or acknowledgement or whatever your vote is with regard to this question. So we can take that to the councilman's office, and he would then in turn forward that to the entire body of city council.
All right. So, in the last year, we've got a lot of words that have taken on new meaning. Efficacy, not a word I used to use, but now we want to know what the efficacy is of vaccines or of different medical treatments, right? And we're zooming along now means something quite different than it used to. So another word is ally. And we're having a good, lively conversation. The question becomes, how do we each be allies of each other in the new meaning of ally? And that is, I think, what we're really talking about. And then on a practical basis, I want to circle back to Andre, if you know, or Shaka, is there money involved in this effort? Meaning, is it, what is it that exactly we'd be recommending to our governing board that to then recommend to our new council member and the council as a whole?
All we're looking for is support in terms of just saying that your group is on board with adding, enhancing the Crenshaw name with the cultural icon Malcolm X. It's that simple. We're not asking for any financial support or anything along those lines.
But what is
anything.
it that you're going to be doing? Because I'm asking because I think for you to be allied with an ally of us, you're asking us to be an ally of you. Again, the new meaning of ally. Would the effort to co-name everything eliminate any pot of money that would have otherwise been available for some of this other effort? I mean, are you guys raising private funds? Because the gateway and placemaking effort has just never happened for the Crenshaw streetscape plan, and Andre knows what I'm talking about, because this is not the first time we've had some of the part of this conversation. This has been going on for a decade, I think. Is that about right, Andre?
Let me make one statement prior to Andre, if I can, and that is just part of what you just mentioned and part of what Ms. Mogul just mentioned with regards to past efforts and that kind of thing. Back in 2000, myself and Torrance Reese, we were a part of that effort back then. If you guys remember back then, what we were doing, our effort was towards changing Crenshaw to Malcolm X Boulevard, not adding Malcolm X to the Crenshaw name. And what's more significant is people were we had a lot of support at that time even, but a lot of the backlash, a lot of the people who didn't support were very specific as to why. And a lot of it had to do with the effect that it would have on the businesses if that took place. And so we took that into consideration in this move. And now that's hence we are attempting to do what's been done in Harlem and other places in the country with a co-naming effort that does not negatively impact the current businesses.
Yeah, so that wasn't really what I was referring to as our effort. Our prior effort, I know, Andre, I'm talking over you. Our UNNC effort wasn't related to that. It was related to placemaking and recognizing, it was related to placemaking. So the question just becomes, can these efforts both work? Okay, Andre, I know you were trying to talk.
And I know it's getting late, so I'll be brief. It's just saying, yeah, that was some Title VI funds, or it was some leftover CRA funds that's sort of floating around out there for placemaking. And I hear someone with their mute not on.
It might be Shaka. Okay, there we go.
Okay. And also, I just want to say this in response to Mrs. Mogul's question. That was an failed effort by Nate Holden and there's going to be a news story, but KCRW, by the way, regarding this, to entirely name the boulevard from Wilshire all the way to wherever, Tom Bradley Boulevard, completely.
Right.
That, and I myself would not, there are a lot of opposition and pushback for various reasons for that, including myself, actually, to be quite honest. It was not a popular idea. So we don't want to equate what we're trying to do with anything on that kind of scale. But in terms of the funding, we're not asking for an NPG or neighborhood purpose grant from your neighborhood council, which I know you're allowed up to like $5,000. We aren't asking for any of that money. But what if you volunteer, once the planning stage happens, if you find fit that you may want to be a part of our program, fine, so be it. But there's no coercion or request for you to do so. We expect to have national and international attention brought to the city in Crenshaw Boulevard. As Shaka said, he is an internationally renowned figure. We're not asking for any grants or any money from your pockets. More than likely, the money will come from the city's general fund, what's left of it after the devastation that's going on right now with the pandemic and the taxes, but what's left of it from the general fund, and working through directly with LADOT and the Bureau of Street Services to actually go to Piper Tech and make the signs and install the signs at the various locations from the freeway to the end of the city. Wherever there's a sign in the street name, there will be a compatible one right beneath the name Crenshaw throughout the corridor. So that will cost nothing on your part. I just wanted to make that clear.
So would not interrupt it's not really active, but any effort to do a Crenshaw Malcolm X, whatever version of Angel Walk or whatever wouldn't have an impact
Oh,
negative
no.
effect on that.
Not at all. In fact, it would be complementary. Absolutely. In fact, right there along what they call the Crenshaw Dwell, you'll notice the little circular placemaking, a circular information, way showing, whatever they're called. There's from, I guess, Coliseum South all the way through to King Boulevard. You'll see these various, there's a couple of them in front of the Sentinel building, for example. You'll see these along the corridor. So they're already in place. And during the development of the streetscape plan, we certainly made allowances to provide incentives to have those type of street enhancements implemented throughout the corridor.
Okay, Mitzi, I know you have your hand up again. And you may go ahead.
Am I being called on?
Yes.
Okay, so just a couple of things. I know that I'm in the minority here. So when Malcolm X said that Jews bought their equal rights, he wasn't being an anti-Semite or anything, and that's just one comment. You said that when he was bad, he was very bad. Why are you honoring someone who was very bad? Why not honor someone like, I'll just pick one, Paul Williams, who was never very bad. He was a gentleman and a gentleman, and he achieved something that no black man had ever achieved before. So I don't get it. When there are so many significant black people, men and women, who deserve to be recognized, but this is the one you're leading with? Somebody said earlier this evening that these are should be community decisions and there should be a consensus. Well, shouldn't you have done that first before just picking somebody that you think is a swell guy? So pick someone who wasn't a racist and an anti-Semite? Or do you not mind insulting all of your Jewish neighbors? I just don't get it. And by the way, nobody addressed my comment about switching out Malcolm X for John Lewis. There was a man of achievement. That's it. There's nothing else I can say, because I can see that your minds are made up and you're not really open to having a discussion about who should be honored. Should it be Dorothy Height, who was, by the way, very, very significant in the 1963 March on Washington, but she gets none of the credit. Why? Because she was a woman. She was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1994. Yeah. How about Misty Copeland,
Okay.
the first Black prima ballerina? How about Kizzmekia Corbett? I'm just curious, does anybody on the line even know who Kizzmekia Corbett is? She's still
Sorry.
very much alive. Anybody know who she is?
Well, I don't want everybody to jump in, Mitzi. So
Well, I guarantee you, I know
no,
the answer.
I don't know. Yeah.
She's a doctor, and she was key in the development of the vaccine that was produced by Moderna.
Okay.
So do we all owe her a debt of gratitude? Damn straight. That's
Okay.
it. I'm done.
Thank you. And Salel, I know you've got your hand up too, and I'm counting the clock. It's 8:12. Can you do like 1 or 2 minutes?
Me?
No.
Oh, me?
Yes.
Let's compromise. Basically, because we do have 2 other agenda items, and I can get long-winded on that, but 'cause that was a lot, and this is only going to go one way for me as well. But that is a hero, and one thing that triggers me, and that's hurtful and doesn't make me feel safe, is regards to how our narrative is always being hijacked by someone that doesn't even belong to our community, and just how hurtful that can be some of the time. And it's dicey, but if we really want to go there, we're on to Hungan land anyway. So we really have to be careful when we come to that. And when these conversations come up, that's why we don't have them, because everyone has an opinion. It's just like a navel and an anus, and it's something we want to be careful about. So I'm going to leave it there, but it's something that we still need to keep having, even if it is uncomfortable, and it makes one angry and divisive and polarized. I encourage that too, because if we never speak on it, then it just keeps festering. But we really all have to take a step back when it comes to how our city is planned and going forward, because everyone's in the wrong.
Okay.
There's no one's right in regards to this. But that's my 2 cents on that one.
Okay. And Shaka, I know you want to respond. I do want to say, just in terms of our own UNNC schedule, for our April meeting, we actually have as a speaker Capri Maddox, who's the head of the city's new Department of Civil Rights, and it includes the Human Rights Commission and everything reporting to her. So in some sense, we're going to start that kind of conversation from 6:30 to 7 on April, the first Thursday of April. This agenda item might be better at that meeting if what we're hearing tonight will continue. I don't know. But just FYI, it happened, coincidence of timing. But we could still bring this to March. Anyway, Shaka, you wanted to respond, and then I think we do need to do something here.
Yeah, just very quickly. I just want to say to Ms. Mogul and to all of you, once again, just to reiterate, we're not either or. It's not Malcolm X or any of the names mentioned. We are in support of I have not heard a name thus far that is not support worthy. So if Ms. Mogul wants to put forth an effort to honor any of the people that she mentioned, then we would gladly support that effort. And we look forward to it. The more the merrier as far as we're concerned, because these are all people that deserve to be honored. We're just simply saying that we're putting forth the effort at this time to honor an international hero, one that has been time tested and proven to represent somebody who speaks truth to power, who have demonstrated a level of, and when we talk about his past versus the Malcolm X that we got to love, we believe in redemption. We understand that the journey that got Malcolm to become the Malcolm that had that courage to do the things that he did in his life, to represent us to the degree with the commitment level that he did. That we understand that was a dicey journey, a journey that we don't advocate, and a journey that we hope to alleviate the conditions that produced that Malcolm, as opposed to creating and perpetuating conditions that produced the Malcolm of later, the Malcolm who was against all those things he was in his younger years.
All right. Well, I think whenever we do something like that, there's also the opportunity for learning and just opportunity for learning, teaching. I guess you call it teaching moments. So it is an interesting geography that this would traverse through, because it's a combination also of areas that had racial covenants, restrictive covenants where people of color were not able to buy homes, and then other areas that were open. An interesting conversation in America is who was considered a person of color, and it really depended on the year and the location. So in this city, Jews were people of color until they weren't, if I'm saying that right. So the area between Adams and Jefferson, or perhaps Adams and Exposition, west of Crenshaw, did not have racial covenants when it was developed, and it became immediately a primarily Jewish neighborhood. So there has been said to me after we had our meeting, you did a little presentation, I think, at executive committee a while back, right, Andre? Maybe last July, or I'm losing track of time. But I had gotten some emails about, wait, this isn't good, because the street would be going through a historically Jewish community, and he was anti-Semitic. So I've heard that already before. I know it was a historically Jewish community west of Crenshaw. So, but that may not be pertinent to today's conversation. But I think it can be, if this happens, somehow a teaching moment. In other words, it's not just co-naming a street, but will there be a place where people can learn about Malcolm X? And could that place have the full story, warts and all? In other words, the good, the bad, the ugly. I don't know the answer. I'm just saying these are questions. But anyway, John, what do you think we should do in terms of moving this along to somewhere?
Yeah. So I hate to say something so neutral as, I think everyone who said things are right at a level.
Yeah.
And that I think we're all in agreement that Crenshaw, the name Crenshaw, is meaningless to all of us. I know he was a developer. I don't know anything more than that he owned the land, he subdivided it, and that was his legacy. He named the street after him. I don't want to get into a question about Crenshaw, but it seems like we're all in agreement.
The family's still alive, so it's not meaningless. In this case, it happens to be a family that's still alive.
Talk about something that was bought. He'd be bought and sold the land, and he named it. Anyway, I don't want to talk about Crenshaw. So it seems like there is consensus that renaming a street after a person who is important to the community that it is in is agreed upon. I think we got that. And I'm sure Cesar Chavez had some warts, but he had a big chunk of Sunset named after him because that's what the community wanted. And I agree with, I'm sorry, is it Soleil? S-O-N? Is that
Yes.
you? Yes, sorry. I agree that's what Soleil said. It's up to the community, and I think this is what this will rise and fall on the debate over Malcolm X, and not about John Lewis or anybody else who might be deserving or might not be deserving. So, but I don't see the John Lewis committee in front of us. It's about Malcolm X, who is it's internationally recognized name. I grew up in the 60s and 70s. I know the controversy that I just have, not even knowing that much about the history that I just grew up with. That doesn't, to me, it's going to be about this discussion about whether it's important to the community or not and what it represents. And if it fails and it becomes John Lewis Boulevard at some point, that is awesome, but that will be the process that gets us there. And this is just the process. So I think the discussion is going to be about Malcolm X and not whether someone else is more or less deserving. It's going to be about Malcolm X. And so I think we should let it ride on that. And I want to do something, it's personal, and there's going to be a discussion on it. And this committee is such a technical committee and not a political committee. It's about the technicality of stuff. I almost want to say proposing something to move that the renaming or the co-naming of Crenshaw Boulevard to a figure important to the community is supported, and then this is the one that's on the table now, and let it go from there. And I know that's not going to help our agenda for the governing board, because it's going to be a 2-hour-long discussion there as well.
No,
But I
no,
don't know where to go from there.
right. No, my concern as the person who sets the governing board agendas is which agenda is a better one to set this for? Because we already have so many things for March, but then again, Andre came to us, last July and was hoping that we'd set it on our August agenda, which was also I mean, in other words, what Shaka doesn't know is that we've gone through month after month after month of 4.5-hour meetings at our governing board, not ending till after 11 o'clock at night. So it's like, oh my God, which one would be worse to do it, March or April? But at least if we did it in April, I could do it right after Capri has been there, and she could maybe stay and help moderate that discussion. So that's the only thing I'm thinking about, because she'd be the perfect person to help with that. If the discussion needed moderating, which it might not. So anyway, but that doesn't for tonight, John, what are you trying to say? That this committee would
That's why
it's such a board?
It's such a gosh.
Okay, I'm looking back at the agenda.
I'm leaning towards saying, so it's not wishy-washy, that supports the co-naming of Crenshaw Boulevard and supporting this, I want to say suggestion, this proposal by this group for discussion. And
well, I have a thought,
because there's energy behind it. If someone came before us and said, well, we're going to rename Wilshire Donald Trump Boulevard, I'm not sure what the support would be, but at least we know that there's something there to move it forward.
oh,
And
please
there's
don't even
energy
say,
behind this, which
please,
says
God.
it's
Yeah,
important.
okay, go ahead. Well, here's what I'm thinking out loud. It's because I'm looking at what was written on the agenda, which was really written in their letter, which also talks about it's respecting the iconic thoroughfare that is Crenshaw Boulevard. I wonder if we wouldn't want to do a motion that basically says that we recommend that we would, support a co-naming of Crenshaw Boulevard while respecting the iconic thoroughfare that is named Crenshaw Boulevard, and respecting UNNC's prior efforts to do, hang on, now I'm going to look at the streetscape thing because it's actually listed. Wayfinding and gateways and placemaking to honor the diverse history of our neighborhood. So in other words, that's not, it's like, again, my concern is that this will overwhelm any effort we might attempt to do after COVID to go back to that as we're getting the, so I don't know, but that's just me. That's not really what anybody else said tonight except for Mitzi. You know, I just would, you know, to me, it's all about our history. I mean, our children do not know any of the names that Mitzi mentioned, or very few of the names I mentioned, and very few of our local heroes. And why not? I mean, there's an emerging, I don't even know what's happening with it, but as you may or may not know, there's a motion at council to rename a stretch of Figueroa for Kobe Bryant, and a huge backlash against that from Latinx activists and Latinx historians, as well as the Figueroa bid. So, you know, I don't want to get mired into that, but I think by having it be a co-name, not a rename, it really helps mitigate what's going on the Figueroa proposal. But it doesn't help us keep alive and do the teaching of all the other historical figures who were trailblazers and pioneers and lived here. So so that doesn't mean I'm opposed to this, but I'm trying to see, is there a motion that can sort of bring all of that together?
Maybe the integration of all that together, because you know, I like the young lady was saying, I remember when we first came to California to scout around, I remember the Japanese presence. And then it was just, at one time it was there and then it was gone. And I do remember Jewish people and all types of people that used to be in this area, and Armenians. So my thing is not to also, you know, it was brought to my attention that diversity is being invited to the dance, and inclusion is being actually asked to dance. So we don't want to like kind of bulldoze anyone, and you do want to be respectful to say Miss Mogul's opinion, because this is a very polarizing figure as well. But on west of the Mississippi, there's not that many Malcolm X's around, because it's just not the state for that. And most of these states are very they're just from the dominant culture's perspective, and we're now coming and reckoning to that. So maybe it's just a conversation for us to marinate on before you make a decision on anything. It's better always to measure twice and cut once, because if you come back and you know you don't want Frankenstein's monster, you know, like a patchwork of whatever, and then you know, because Los Angeles is, to me, it's always coming, it's like kind of like a snake. Every 10 years it sheds its skin, it's a different manifestation, and we bulldoze over what our past was, and we have to stop doing that. And that's what I was kind of rambling on before. You know, the things that make us really great, why people want to come here, we need to play that up now.
Okay. Well, John, I have a question for you, because obviously we do have another planning and zoning committee meeting before the governing board. I don't want to have another hour and a half discussion on this, but should we, I like that word marinate. Should we marinate working with Shaka and Andre? John, should you and I, working with the two of them, marinate a motion and put it on the motion on the agenda for our February 3rd and February 4th?
I'm not sure what marinate. I agree.
I
I'm
mean,
not sure how much marinating.
Anything you marinate tastes delicious, right? Vegetable or meat. So it's a good thing. Let's do that.
Well, in other words, take some time and compose a motion and bring that to the committee. You know, the four of us do this offline and come back on March 3rd, with an actual motion that takes 10 minutes. I mean, it'd be hard. What do you, or just do it now and know that we really blown our other agenda.
I just don't know what it is without, because no matter what our motion is, the same discussion is going to happen at the governing board. And
well, that
with
is
every
true.
point,
So the other
and-
option would be we forward it to governing board with that, but that's us punting and not being responsible.
and I'm wondering, and I hate to use the word, I hate to use the phrase special meeting, but this is important enough. I know we didn't have this discussion at all about Obama Boulevard. It just
No, we
happened.
didn't. It just was imposed on us.
It just was
It just
short. I remember
arrived
it was
one
just very
day.
brief.
Right. But this is a
And-
longer, I mean, this is a little different. And one reason it's a little different is for us, is we had never discussed having placemaking and honoring
Yeah.
Angel Walk, whatever, on Rodeo, which is now Obama. But we have had those discussions at UNNC about Crenshaw. So Boulevard, not because it's named Crenshaw, but because, you know, this was a goal. We were all excited about the possibility of having these funds that really were stripped away when the redevelopment agency was stripped away. Yeah.
I almost want to make a motion that the Planning and Zoning Committee supports the idea of co-naming Crenshaw Boulevard for a figure important to the community that that's placemaking. And the motion tonight is to discuss Malcolm X as that person. And again, there's nothing we can do as a consensus that's going to ever stop a discussion of that. And that's
no.
why
and they've made a more specific proposal. We need to either support their proposal with maybe some things, but they're not proposing anybody. They're proposing Malcolm X.
yes, and that's what so
I mean, in
think-
other
I
words,
think
it would be, the only question I would have is supports the proposal. I'm sort of typing something to co-name Crenshaw with Malcolm X, but we also support a continuing effort to do, is this called placemaking? Placemaking and, you know, along Crenshaw, about our specific cultural heritage in this community, something like that. I'm posting something like that. If you all see it.
I think that's, it's not quite taking a position, but I think it will set a discussion that it deserves, and Malcolm X deserves to be part of that discussion. It's true, no matter how many warts he has or doesn't have, he is an international figure, and this is what's presented in front of us. So
so do you see what I posted?
yeah, I'm actually on my iPad, so it's harder for me to call up. Hold on, let me see. There we go. Got it.
A little bit of bad grammar.
Yeah, there's a
Two.
it's qualified, which makes it. So I think it's, you know, again, we're not going to stop the discussion, and I think we're welcoming that discussion and supporting the seed of this idea that it's about centering a community along its public places and making it permanent, especially in the face of change. So it's something.
Wait,
I think it's
what did you
supporting
just say?
Oh, I don't know. It's
Okay,
supporting placemaking through the identification of public places, especially in the face of change, something like that.
of our historic personages from the
Yes.
community, especially in the face of change.
Yep.
Because we don't, if the places are kind of going away,
But streets do not go away, so.
streets do not. Well, again, what we had really been talking about when we were doing the whole streetscape thing wasn't renaming streets, it was adding identifiers and placemakers, not
Yeah.
naming streets.
But you know, renaming a street's is a big one.
I know. Something that phrase. This is poorly written, but anyway, this is not really a good motion, but is that the gist of what you want
Yeah.
to take to the board? And then I know, I'm just saying, and it's like, oh, there's, you know, this is what happens. Everybody wants their agenda item, right? So, you know, we're going to get CIS proposals, and, you know, we're going to also, this is when we approve all the missions. The next board meeting, we have to approve all the mission statements for the committees, and we'll maybe have some land use stuff, and, you know, it's just going to go on. And I guess that's the way it is. That is who we are and the way it's going to be. So there you are.
So I moved to that whatever Laura typed there, which I'm reading, I moved that.
But is there a
Yeah.
second?
A second,
Who was that?
Soleil.
Okay. And I may have just,
And of course,
did I spell your
typing on
name
the
right?
fly, I'm the gist of that.
Yeah, but did I spell your name correctly? S-O, well, you don't even see it here. I'm hitting now. Now you would know. Did I spell your name correctly? Or
Yes.
close? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we don't have a good voting mechanism at this committee. Well, how do we do a poll? Here, I'm gonna see. No, that's not gonna work. Okay, never mind. All right, what I guess I'm gonna ask you, oh, I'm seeing another chat. Yes, we're gonna do, yes, I'm gonna just ask you all to, if you are in favor of the motion, which is poorly, by me, poorly written. But the motion would be that it's a recommendation to the governing board that the Planning and Zoning Committee supports the proposal to co-name Crenshaw Boulevard with the name Malcolm X, but we also support a continuing effort to do placemaking along Crenshaw about our specific cultural heritage in this community through the identification of our historic personages, especially through the face of change, which is whatever that means. That would be the motion. I heard a voice. Is there an objection to what I wrote? This is the motion. Okay, so all in favor of that motion, if you wouldn't mind raising your blue hand, in other words, use the raise hand function, or in John's case, because John and I cannot raise a blue, oh, John just raised his blue hand. How'd you do that? As co-host. Anyway, all in favor, please raise your hand. And okay, and I see 3, and then that's, my hand would be up. Take your hands down. All opposed, please raise your hand. So I'm going to take down the hands that were there. Okay. Anyone opposed? So if you neither raise your hand for yes or no, I assume you are whoever you are a neutral. So this was not overwhelming, John, but we had 4 yes, 1 no, and the rest are not voting.
I count,
I raised my hand in
Yeah.
opposition.
Yes,
Yes,
you're
I
a
counted
no.
I don't know if you
5.
saw it.
You had 5 yeses.
I counted, I counted 5 yeses, 1 no, and 2 no vote.
Okay.
Okay.
So, all right. So again, Shaka and Andre, I'm gonna stay in touch with you because I understand you want us to do this at the March meeting. I will try. We have the city controller speaking at that meeting on his new data sets on, on equity, and that'll probably go a while, and then we have a full agenda. So if I can't, I will assess the agenda. Otherwise, it would be the April meeting, which I feel might be better, but I'm not trying to put you off forever. But if we did do April, it'd be April Fool's Day, April 1st.
It's never better. It's always 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah, no, it's always freaking bad. But what I mean is,
know.
Capri could help us moderate the discussion. I mean, the fact is she's
Oh,
going to
good.
be there. She will have talked about some of these issues in what she's talking about anyway from 6:30 to 7. So it may be we will be better primed for this discussion. That's the only thing I'm thinking. So we will have had the touchy-feely talk to begin with, but maybe we don't want to wait that long. Okay. All right.
So I have a, are any of the other agenda items, well, thank you,
Yeah.
Shaka and Andre, for your presentation. Thanks for coming to our meeting.
Hey, thank you,
Um,
guys.
Thank you
Thank
for the
you.
robust discussion as well. Mhm.
All right.
Yeah, it was a good discussion. Are any of the other items on our agenda time sensitive?
They are
Take
not.
care.
Well, maybe yes, maybe no.
Or is there anyone in the audience? Anyone in the audience who's specifically here for any of the other agenda items?
Yeah, and
Okay.
those agenda items, the two, well, I'll tell you why one might be, John, but it may not be. The tree one might, the only reason it would be time sensitive is, as you know, the executive committee never happened last night because we didn't have quorum. And we're gonna have to have a second
Yeah.
dip at that before the board meeting, probably because of the funding requests and especially related to trees. This isn't exactly related to that, so we could do this the day before the board meeting. And then on the council motions, item 5, the only thing is that you, John, don't know is that our UNNC CIS committee chair, Janie, has basically said if planning and zoning wants to do a community impact statement, we don't need to go through her. We can just do them. So, these are dense, completely dense motions. I think it would be hard to go through all of them in less than 20 minutes. So, but I do think we might want to be taking to the governing board a community impact statement. So the problem is if we don't do it tonight and we wait till March 3rd, we could not take it to March 4th governing board meeting because the CIS has to be printed on the agenda, the actual CIS.
Okay.
So, but I don't know if we would want to do that anyway. This is now a technical discussion. I mean, if we could just do 5 minutes on this and just make a decision about what we want to do with this.
Okay.
Is that okay with you?
Yeah, we still have 20 minutes. I just don't want to get into another hour
Okay, yeah,
conversation.
so why don't we skip the trees, but try to do the item on the RSO ones. Right, so that would be there's several initiatives to preserve the city's rent stabilized housing units. And they all are well intended, but as you know, the city doesn't necessarily know how to properly do ordinance writing. So it's kind of gotten weird. So I think what I want to do is start with, I don't know, start by just saying UNNC has expressed its concerns now over and over again as we're getting these TOC projects, that it feels like we are potentially losing more affordable housing than we're gaining, right? And one of the ones I'm looking for this to share. I'm trying to share the screen. One of the issues is SB 330, which is the new state law. John, and you probably know a lot more about it than I do, but essentially one of the things SB 330 has said is that any project that would demolish rent, what we would call RSO, rent stabilized units, must replace them 1-to-1, right? Is that pretty much what you understand? John? Hello?
Hold on for 1 second. Hold on, hold on for 1 second, please. I don't know them well enough to, but yes, I know that is a big issue, and especially what we've been seeing is demolishing 5 and then a big TOC incentive
3.
by adding 3.
Right.
So
So
I think
SB 330 seeks to correct that by requiring a 1-to-1 replacement of any rent stabilized units that are demolished. So if you demolish 9, you have to build 9 in your new project. So far, so good. What UNNC has been discussing, and most neighborhood councils have been discussing, is that the right and proper thing would be for any project that's getting the TOC incentives. So if they're required to do 2 extremely low income units to get their incentives, we have said plus 9. I mean, if they're demolishing 9 and they only need to do 2, it would be 11 because they need to do RSO, which is not extremely low income. It might be workforce housing. That 11 of the units would be that. So what the city attorney has interpreted as the best position for the city is that no, they wouldn't have to do that. They just need to do the RSO replacement, and they no longer would have to do the TOC incentive affordable units. And I do feel we need to oppose that, because what is the point? I know it's harder for the developer, but
so I think I actually agree with the city attorney, because many of the low income units that we have are substandard. They're not accessible. They are not, they are not insulated. They don't have proper
RSO units.
Any unit that's being demolished and being replaced is generally being replaced by a superior, healthier, more energy efficient unit, separate from any topic of historic buildings. That's a different thing.
Okay.
But I think that's actually a good trade-off in saying that yes, those units can apply to TOC because you are replacing. It's not 1-to-1, and the point is that there are many substandard units. And I've had many projects that have demolished 10 or 15, 20 units of very substandard, unsafe, unhealthy, inaccessible units and replace them with modern, accessible, energy efficient, healthy units. And there shouldn't be any impediment to that. And
well, you're saying it's a penalty, right? How is that a penalty? You just said there shouldn't be a penalty to that. What is that?
Well, I think it's, did I say penalty? I think, yes, I think there would be a penalty to say, yes, build and replace, and then add more. And I think, because that's a challenge for developers when margins are so thin anyway. And I also want to say, and if you do more, take down some barriers, put a few more carrots in there. I have an affordable housing, a nonprofit affordable housing developer looking to demolish, I think, 5 units on Central, replace it with 64 units of 100% affordable housing. And those 5, that is the process by which to replace those units is doable, but onerous. How do we make that less? So when someone is doing more, or doing more than what a market rate developer would do. How do you incentivize that so you give people better places to live
Right,
across the board?
right. Jasmine? Jasmine, you have your hand?
Sorry if I missed it. So would these incentives be just for affordable housing developers, or any developers would be
No,
eligible for
yeah.
the?
Well, again, so I'll explain maybe using a specific example. We have it's not yet demolished, maybe it'll never be built, but we have an approved TOC project that we would have opposed, but it was more by right and there was no ever hearing. Anyway, at 1310 South St. Andrews, so near Pico. And it currently is 9 units RSO and likely very low rents. Though I don't really know how low is low, but the planner had told me they were not, they were not market rate rents. It will be a big building, something like 60 units will be built, 50, almost 60 units. And just because of the zoning as well, they only have to build 4 affordable units. So they're getting a massive amount of units, taking up every spare space on that lot, basically, on a single lot. 9 families are being unhoused and 4 people or families will get new housing. And that's already approved, so it's not subject to SB 330 as far as I know. But if it were subject to SB 330, my view, is personal, is that the 9 people or families, 9 households should be allowed to come back in as the SB 330 RSO, right of return, right? That's the RSO units. And because they're getting massive incentives here, height and no side yards and very little open space, they still should build the 4 affordable units so that we should have a real gain because they're getting massive incentives. So that's sort of John, for the 100% affordable projects, I don't think this even applies. I mean,
Only the process to have it. Let it happen.
But I think it's all.
But I would say there is a gain for the 9 households that are living in a, again, regardless of historical issues about the building, or living in substandard conditions, and they won't get the housing department ensures that all affordable units are spread across the development, are uniform unit types or a mix of unit types. So there is an improvement there. And my feeling is that it won't happen. Right. There won't be any development to have replacement housing that's better than what theirs is now if the onus becomes too great. And I think I agree with SB 330, and I think I would support a motion to say, yes, there should be, if there are 9 households, there should be room for 9 households in the new building, and then incentivize that. But I think going this plus that, it just diminishes and diminishes and diminishes the incentive to do anything, and then it gets moved on. And
right.
That's
okay,
not
so
good
Jasmine, we've now interrupted you, I think.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Jasmine.
No worries. Yeah, no, thank you for the clarification. That's what I thought. I would actually agree with Laura that I hear this argument that, profit margins are already thin, but it's like with the rates that housing is at this time, like I just had hard to believe. And if we're number one, as far as like these tenants having a right of return, like our partners constantly sort of run into the same issue as far as actually getting those tenants back into those units. And it very rarely happens. And when it does, there's still the huge inconvenience of folks having to be displaced to begin with, and then having the possibility of returning. And then if they do, it's like they're forced to move again. Unfortunately, affordable housing is being taken off the market every day, whether it's actually restricted affordable housing or RSO units. And I don't see any problem with adding an additional 4 units when, like you said, Laura, there is already, another 40 something units that'll be at market rate. And then last thing, I think John, you actually mentioned this, I think, on a call prior, someone did, but we also see developers sort of letting their buildings fall to the wayside so that they can sort of get these use these loopholes to be able to LSAC folks or, shut down the building for whatever reason because their building has fallen into despair. So I don't think it's a good idea to incentivize them to sort of let their buildings fall into these, destitute conditions and then kick folks out, knowing that unfortunately those families might not be able to come back at some point. So I don't think there's anything wrong with adding, a few more units. And I think that they can more than afford it with the rates that a lot of these apartments are going at now.
Right.
Yeah, it's yeah.
Yeah. John, I think, and I know that Soleil has her hand up, that the issue for me, but I'm hearing that, this was brought to my attention at a citywide, at the Alliance meeting. So many other neighborhood councils were there. And what was being said is that the legislative intent of SB 330 was to increase the amount of affordable units. That's the same legislative intent of the TOC ordinance, obviously. But we are facing in our community these TOC proposals. So I'm not talking about the 100% affordable proposals. I'm talking about the market rate, what some would call gentrifying. I don't personally like that word, but it might be apt here. Wildly out of character with our communities, way tall, very little open space, no side yards, just wildly out of character. And the incentive is that they were supposed to be offering, the EL, affordable units. And then this legislation came in. I do not understand why the city attorney even has the right to say, well, wait, we can join them together, because I don't think that was the Sacramento legislative intent, or at least not by right. I mean, I wouldn't mind them evaluating on a project by project basis, because maybe a particular project isn't as bad as I just described, perhaps, not wildly out of character, not 4 stories higher than everything else on the block, right? And et cetera, and maybe they can't pencil out if they had to provide all those units, but that needs to be then an entitled discretionary action that forgives them it, in my opinion, not a city attorney interpretation that it would just be onerous or we don't have to do it. I mean, I don't know. I'm blathering now. Soleil, you have your hand up.
Well, just basically, what you just described, that's just, populating the landscape all over. I have mixed feelings about that, but there's also just, I guess this is where these types of decisions are to be made, because there's just, people are never brought back. I know people at 410 Rossmore, and they're debating on trying to get the last people out. Once those people are out, they just don't come back. And she's been allotted to stay and is negotiating the amount to be moved out, but it's just like, it's not going to be the same unit that she's leaving. That's a bad mix, even though and even that's kind of neither here nor there, but it's just, it's still not dealing with the problem of people being no affordable housing for people that are here already, displacement of communities, and a lot of these whatever they are, even some of the older homes that are have character and have significance, they're being like used as hotels. All this development and movement and whatnot, it's just, some of it's just not sustainable. It's like, who is it for? And if we can do all of this, then there should be some type of buy-in for public housing somewhere. And
Right.
We're just setting up the same inequities that has got
Right.
us where we are right now.
Well, I did, again, I think the focus of this and several other initiatives somehow is to preserve already existent RSO housing. And Jasmine, I see you have your hand up a second time. Is that right? I'm having trouble tracking this. Is your hand, Jasmine, is your hand still up or up again?
Sorry, yeah, no, it was up again. If I could add
Okay.
something really quickly,
Sure.
just to the displacement note, just that those buildings also sort of lead to these increases in property values in the surrounding area, which also impacts other, buildings, other rents, and other folks who may be, renting at these lower rates. So just wanted to add that. And then also, I'm sorry again. Can you clarify whether we are talking about SB 330 itself or
We're talking about council file 20-0047, which is about preserving, but there's also council file 21-0035, but the 471, because there is another little aspect of it. I'm pulling that up on the screen. Noting I had said they don't seem to know what they're doing. That's just me. So on the same one, 20-0047, they're looking for reports. So the slide I had shown before was the beginning of a report. That's where the city attorney kind of weighed in, but they're still needing more report after report. But then I know we're being recorded, so I'm trying to be cautious about my words. I put number 5 in orange. Can you guys see that? They're now adding consider the preparation of another ordinance to extend the definition of a housing development project, which is another piece of SB 330, to include new single family homes. And that ordinance should prevent all new single family homes and substantially remodeled single family residences in all multifamily zones, and ban the construction of a new single family home where one or more units of housing were demolished at the site. So I'm not sure the last piece is illegal under the Constitution, but I'm pretty sure the first part is not even legal under the Constitution, but most importantly for us in UNNC, so many of our historical, period character single family residences, which may need substantial rehabilitation, are in multifamily zones. So if this language goes forth like that into an ordinance, it may not allow someone to get a full general rehab permit for a historical house if they happen to be in Harvard Heights or Angeles Vista or Arlington Heights or any of our many other HPOZ and character residential overlay zone neighborhoods that are also multifamily zoned. I would not be able to get, if this passes, if I suddenly had an extra $100,000 and I want to substantially rehab my house again, I would not be able to get a permit under this new proposal. So I don't think they were thinking of that. I think they were thinking of leaving one chimney standing and doing a do-over.
And I was also thinking about moving in, demolishing a duplex on a very valuable lot and building a mansion is what they're talking about there. And but I think also if a person buys, say, a historic home that was divided up legally or illegally, and those units are vacant, that the original purpose of that structure was a single family home, and that should maybe it's about reversion back to of a building back to its original built purpose versus what we were both seeing as the intent here is not to have single family homes subsume where there could be a lot more housing or where there is a lot more housing existing.
Well, yeah, I think I see the intent, and it's the second part of that: ban construction of a new single family home where 2 or more units of housing were demolished at the site.
Yeah.
But intent aside, I'm going to sound very Republican and property rights. I think the Supreme Court has weighed in on stuff like this. And I don't mean the California Supreme Court, I mean the federal, because it does really take away a person's property rights to say that if the underlying zone happens to be duplex, you can't build a single family home. Forget about the demolition of
Yeah.
units part of it. I don't know. It's sort of like I don't know what they mean.
I don't agree with that. If
Well,
if there's
our
a
whole zoning code would need to be changed because right now, and maybe it will be, right now, the LA City zoning code allows, it's equal to or less than. So in other words, if your zone is RD2, which is allows 2,000 square feet of lot equals 1 unit. So let's say you could build 4 units. You're not required to build 4 units. You can build anything up to 4 units. We have unlike the Community Redevelopment Agency, CRA always had a equal means equal, and LA City is equal, the zone means equal to or up to that. So, that's why our commercial zones, you can build residential because it's equal to or up to that. Oh, you went.
So I'm actually gonna, can you hear me?
Yeah, now.
Okay. I actually think that, but it's not, if the city's making an effort to create as much housing as possible, to have areas that can accommodate as much housing as possible, and then someone decides that they like a parcel, can't afford it, and buys it for a single family house, that is a problem. That is a problem with someone with and I'm not saying it's not just Joe Bootstraps coming in and trying to make do on a parcel that no one else wants, but it's a force against gentrification or against density. I mean, that's in the face of density. So I think I could be in favor of not allowing a single family house to be on a multi-zone lot.
I know you didn't want to have a 5-hour conversation about this, but you'd have to understand the sort of racist history of zoning in this city, because back in the 70s, 60s and 70s, much of South LA, I'm hearing some noise on somebody's background, much of South LA was upzoned because, oh my God, people of color live there. And then when we went through the whole AB 283 downzoning process in the late 80s, there were essentially mathematical rules. So if you were on a block that happened to have one fourplex at one corner and a duplex on the other corner, and everything else was single family, but the math came out to, for the whole block, more than one, more than R1, they had to make it R2. And so now you've got an R2 zone, but it's primarily single family. And that would seem unfair as long as you're not demolishing the fourplex. I mean, in other words, like the part about removing units, I understand. But the part about saying, it's R2, you can't build a single family home, but even though you may have lost your home to a fire, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, in other words, there was racist zoning south of Pico. And it was only sort of fixed in the years 1987 through 89 with the citywide process called AB 283, which is technical, but it was not fully fixed. So most of Harvard Heights is now R2, even though there are whole blocks you can go in that you see it's mostly single family homes, but then you see one apartment building with 20 units. So they could not call it R1, even though everything else was single family. So, so there'd be a whole lot of fixing, where's the exceptions? What they're trying to do is in other parts of town. I mean, it's, where people have been asking for years to be downzoned. and they get it, that would be my neighborhood, but they don't get it down to R1, but they get it to where there's a disincentive to demolition of the old houses. And
Yep.
now they want to like reverse all of that and say, well, too bad. We're going to give you an incentive to demolish and a disincentive to keep it a single family. I mean, to me, that's
Mm.
not equity, social justice, whatever. Anyway, so we're not going to make a decision on this tonight. It's after 9. And I can see these are long discussions, but it's good. Right?
Yeah.
Not good to do it tonight, just good.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I agree. And good to not do it tonight because it's a nuanced discussion. And it's the same thing. Close one can of worms and another one opens up somewhere else. And
Well, yeah.
it's,
And
yeah.
and one of these other ones, so I think it was Gil Cedillo, but it might have been current price. Anyway, there's one of the motions, the 21-0035. I'm just going to look at the motion. I'm not even going to post it. They're again creating a citywide 1-to-1 replacement ordinance for RSO units, and even abundant housing, that an entity agrees with it. Nandasi, which is our neighbor council just to the east, North Area Empowerment, they agree with it, except they're pushing to go farther, 2-to-1 replacement. So I know, once again, that's never going to happen, but they're saying, no, you demolish RSO building because it's really affordable. You need to give us 2 RSO units for every 1 you demolish. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. But that, so that's the 21-0035. And then there's another motion that I'm surprised we did not know about because it was made in part by Herb Wesson, helped support it. They're trying to initiate something called an AEPOZ, not an HPOZ, but an AEPOZ to protect, which would be a, what do they call it? Affordable, equitable housing protection overlay zone to protect at-risk communities, especially those that are actively harmed under the racist practices of redlining, to proactively return local control to disenfranchised communities, include specific and meaningful controls over development, such as expanded review of Ellis Act applications, expanded review of demolition permits, especially locations of rent control housing sites, and so on and so forth. So all of these things are up in our shared packet. So I think what I want to ask is that everybody do homework, and maybe we can talk about this again on February 3rd, but it does mean we won't be able to do any community impact statements, which is okay. I don't care. I mean, at March 4th.
Yeah, I agree that these are not simple technical issues. These are all
not at all. No. No, these are interesting times. You said it. We said it the other night. What was that phrase just last night?
May you have an interesting life or something like that.
Yeah, may you live in interesting times. May you have.
May you live in interesting times. Yeah.
Chinese curse. But it is true. I mean, because there also was a motion passed yesterday at City Council, and these are all initiatives. They're not final things. About actually doing a ballot initiative to change the city zoning on a ballot, which now is going to be an interesting thing that I can't imagine it's going to happen on a ballot, but to basically start spreading the zoning wealth to all the more privileged neighborhoods, the ones with more, and by privilege now I'm not talking about color, the ones that have better jobs, better grocery stores. I might be talking about color, but instead of putting all of the multifamily housing zoning and all of the initiatives in our area. So for context, for those who are new to the P&Z committee, When we, UNNC, evaluated in particular, the South Los Angeles Community Plan, we learned that the zoning capacity put into the South Los Angeles Community Plan from its northernmost edge, which is more or less Pico, to Exposition. So our area, but starting from Arlington going east to the 110 freeway, the zoning capacity in this one block of South LA, which includes UNNC and Nandesy, is almost 22% of the entire zoning capacity of the city. And that's just nuts, right? And then Hollywood had another 15, the Hollywood Community Plan has another 15%. And I don't remember what West Adams, Baldwin Hills, Leimert has, but a huge chunk of the city's housing unit zoning capacity is in essentially the historic West Adams district from east to west. And that's just crazy. I mean, they didn't do, when they redid the community plans by Northridge, Cal State Northridge, they didn't add that kind of zoning capacity there, even though that would seem obvious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's not the fact that we have crazy too much. It's other places have crazy too
Crazy
little.
too little. No, exactly.
Yeah.
That they have crazy too little. And since the city has to, in its housing element, somehow show by October another 450,000 capacity for another 450,000 units citywide. Part of the commentary to this new motion at City Council was, this is stupid to try and put it on a ballot. You are required to complete your housing element by October. That's where you need to do it. And the concept of spreading it in other parts of the city was not opposed by anybody. Anyway, Jasmine.
Has UNNC weighed in on the housing element or the RENA allocation?
Not yet. I know we have to. I brought it here.
Okay.
Glazed eyes. I brought it here when was that? About 3 months ago, John. Glazed eyes. But we need to. I just read today the public counsel's letter. Doug Smith's letter. I think it was maybe on behalf of the bigger alliance, ACT LA. And it was excellent. So, okay, we got a lot of homework for you guys.
So Soleil has her hand
I
up.
know. Soleil.
I mean, friends, I don't want to live in a dense city like that. I do have a small little place in Brooklyn and I love it, but I also love a little bit of breathing room, and it's just, I don't know, it's just like going forward, it's just like the vision is just to be, that basically means packing every available piece of space with a multi-family area for the housing that you should have been making along the way as the city was growing. It's been 70 years since the last public housing project. This is the things to come. That is a city killer. Instead of like that area on east of like on Long Beach Boulevard that you're keeping for the next phase of development of the city, let's kind of spread it out. I hope, this is a bad thing that's coming, and we can thwart it off, because dense areas could be a basic pathogen spreader.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, the thing about the 450,000 units, that's something the state has imposed. So I don't see how the city cannot not do it as a double negative. But I just hope they're not doing it here, because they've already done it here, is the point. We already have squeezed a lot of capacity into our zoning. Plus,
and there's a lot of really dumb specific plans, such as the Ventura Boulevard specific plan, which is so restrictive that nothing can happen along that whole boulevard from Studio City up through Nana. And it needs to be removed in favor of doing something that's more equal across the city.
Are you saying they don't get to
It
have,
was a NIMBY specific plan from the 90s.
they don't get to have on Ventura Boulevard TOC projects that are 3 and 4 stories looming above everybody else? Because they should, I'm saying
I
it
think
like that
Ventura
because
Boulevard,
I grew up there. I used to walk down to the thrifty drugstore on
Yeah.
the corner of Laurel and Ventura. And
I think Ventura doesn't have the
neighborhood.
transit service that it needs to have to give you TOC, so they have to do something else. Put a transit line in Ventura.
What I mean is
Isn't
Ventura
it a different
Boulevard.
situation now that after COVID? I mean, there's lots of for rent every place. Are they
Yeah, but we don't have, okay, we're not talking about the ideal, like John said much earlier in the meeting, we're technical. So technically this committee, the city is required to add 400, to show in the housing element, the ability to add 450,000 housing units. And the goal is at the moment to have that spread far more fairly and justly throughout the entire city and all 35 community plans. When you have one community plan that has 25% of the capacity and another Hollywood plan, not the one that necessarily is going to commission tomorrow, but the previous Hollywood plan that had 15% of the capacity, it's not that capacity, which is numbers on a map, is not spread equitably and justly throughout the city in all 35 community plans. You just know it. And if you're correct, John, that Ventura Boulevard won't allow that kind of density, that's just nuts. When I say I grew up there, I grew up there. There's no reason why all along Ventura Boulevard you can't have a Wilshire corridor style buildings. It is a major corridor, even though my beloved Thrifties, which might not be there anymore, and the soda fountain certainly isn't, it harkens back to a different time. But it should go away. And housing should
not to
be
belabor it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It would take a council motion to get rid of that.
Well, it might take a council motion. I understand. So one of the suggestions from the letter written by, I think again, it's on behalf of ACT LA, one of the suggestions for the housing element, and both John and I at different times have sat on the housing element task force for the city in different times, but neither one of us are on it this time out. The suggestion, one of the requirements this year is to identify potential housing development sites. And one of the suggestions that's coming out of ACT LA is that it is, okay, so Jasmine's saying it is on behalf of ACT LA. One of their strong suggestions is that for the housing element, that they not identify any parcel that currently contains RSO housing, because that would be not just an incentive for somebody to demolish it, but this time out, one of the requirements is if it's on the list of potential housing development sites, then it's almost mandatory that they actually try and implement it. So that's not preserving RSO housing. And I've got to call in to Doug Smith to see if I can get more reason, more of the background reasoning on that. But that may well be something I'd want to take forward, that idea, to our governing board to support, because it's very sensible. If the state law has changed, that if you've identified it, you have to incentivize it, then let's not incentivize the demolition of RSO housing, my opinion. Okay, it is now 9:24, and I think we must go. So what do you think, John? Should we end this? Are you frozen? John, I think you're frozen.
I'm here.
Yeah, but your face is frozen anyway. Should we end this meeting? Okay. I'm not hearing a yes, but I'm not hearing a no, but I'm going to declare the meeting to be needing to be
Yes.
adjourned. Okay. Anybody object to that?
I
Okay,
second that motion.
okay. If anybody beside, I will automatically get the chat, which would include that motion that we did on the Crenshaw Boulevard. But if you want also to have a copy of it, recognizing it was very poorly written, to get a copy of the chat before you sign off, you open the chat and then you'll see at the bottom 3 little dots. And if you click on that, it'll give you an option to save the chat if you want it. But I mean, I will get it automatically. Okay. And that is
Okay.
it. So we're gonna say goodbye. Mika, I'm so glad you came because you haven't been here for a while.
Thank you, Laura.
And I'm gonna say that I have to be the last one to leave, folks. So I'm saying, hey, goodbye, but I have to
Bye.
keep the meeting on until everybody else leaves because I don't want to be rude and
Hi,
just
everybody.
Hi, thank
Bye-bye.
you. Laura, may I ask a quick question? It
Sure.
really
Good night,
doesn't
everyone.
pertain to the planning and zoning, but why is it that your Zoom meeting, we could have this regular Zoom meeting, but the West Adams Neighborhood Council, we can't see anything? Or
UNNC made a decision, influenced strongly by me, that we are using the Zoom meeting format and not using the Zoom webinar format. So, so is Stephen Meeks your president, right, for West Adams?
yeah,
Yeah,
that's correct.
most of the neighborhood councils basically said the city bought licenses for Zoom webinar and they're using them and we're not. Ours is just sitting around somewhere because first of all, they didn't ask me and they linked it to my personal email and I already have my own Zoom account. So I can't have 2 Zoom accounts on one email anyway. So they didn't ask and I just didn't bother to argue. So what we've done is the Zoom meeting format. We are doing it fully participatory. It has the waiting room. It has a pass code, which we call the Zoom meeting code because the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment also didn't want us to use the word password on our agendas. And it's like, okay, even though your board uses that word and everybody else uses that word, but that's okay. We'll use Zoom meeting passcode. So we have the Zoom meeting passcode. We have the waiting room and we've had no security issues, but we do end up with longer meetings, as you can see.
Okay,
And we
makes
just
sense.
wanted
Thank
people
you. It
to
was just
participate.
Well, like
right.
I said, good night, ladies, but make sure that you send me that information
Yes,
that you were speaking of, Laura.
I will do.
And good night.
Good night.
Good night, and thank you very much, Laura.
Oh, you're
Have
welcome.
a nice evening. Nice seeing you.
Yeah, is your mom okay? I mean, is everybody okay in COVID?
Yes, we've been staying home and social distancing, no grocery shopping, eating from our garden, staying healthy.
Only eating. Oh my God, you're doing even better than me. I do a little grocery shopping. I go to the farmer's market too. And I only am going now I'm forgetting the name of the place. Sprouts, very expensive, but clean and hardly anybody there because it's very expensive. And otherwise, I'm having food delivered and not eating out of my garden, but I do get a Farm Fresh to You box. So I haven't been to Ralph's since March or Smart and Final. So
Yeah, haven't haven't gone shopping. We don't do anything online. Strictly just relying on what grows in our garden.
wow.
So in the beginning we were eating tempura because it was springtime. It's whatever that's sprouting, and tempura was but it's good. I miss seeing you all, and I enjoy your meeting. So thank you very much, and I don't want to keep you too long.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
okay,
Bye-bye.
thank you. Good night.
Good night.